Ava didn't know the man in her photo, but when she zoomed in, her hands started shaking. Because that face wasn't supposed to be seen. And somewhere in Seoul, he was already looking for her. What Ava didn't know was that this single photo would pull her into a world she could never escape. And worse, the man in that photo wasn't just dangerous. He was someone no one was supposed to see and survive. Ava Carter had taken thousands of photos in her life, but none of them had ever made her feel like this. Her fingers tightened slightly around the camera as she stared at the screen again. She zoomed in, closer, and there it was. That face. Cold, still, unfamiliar, yet impossible to ignore. Ava swallowed. "This doesn't make sense," she whispered. But deep down, she already knew something was wrong. Because it wasn't just a face. It was the way he stood. The way the others around him barely moved. Like they were waiting. Or worse, listening. Ava lowered the camera slowly. Her heartbeat had changed, faster, heavier. Like her body understood something her mind hadn't caught up to yet. Just minutes ago, she had been walking through the city, searching for meaning. Now, she felt like she had stepped into something she didn't understand and couldn't control. Seoul was supposed to give her answers. That was the only reason she came. Not for the lights. Not for the beauty. But for her father. Before he died, he said something that never left her. Seoul is where it started. No explanation. No context. Just those words, and silence after. So Ava followed that silence here, with nothing but a camera and questions no one wanted to answer. She looked back at the image again. The alley. The moment. The mistake. Her chest tightened. She remembered exactly how it happened. The narrow path. The dim light. The strange stillness in the air. It didn't feel safe. But it felt real. And Ava had always trusted real moments. That's why she didn't walk away. That's why she stepped closer. Slowly, carefully. She raised her camera, adjusted the focus, framed the shot, held her breath. And pressed the shutter. Click. The sound had been soft. Almost nothing. But in that moment, it felt loud enough to be heard. One of the men paused. Just for a second. Ava didn't wait to understand. She stepped back immediately, slow, controlled, her pulse racing harder with every movement. She didn't run. Not yet. Running would make noise. Running would draw attention. So she walked. One step. Then another. Until she reached the corner. Then she turned, and disappeared into the street. Now, standing alone in her hotel room, that moment felt different. Heavier. Like something had followed her. Even though nothing had. The door was locked. The curtains closed. The city outside still alive and distant. Everything looked normal. But it didn't feel normal. Ava stared at the screen again, her finger hovering over the image. Delete. That was the smart choice. Erase it. Forget it. Move on. But something stopped her. A quiet feeling she couldn't ignore. This wasn't random. This meant something. Not just danger. Connection. To Seoul. To her father. To the truth she came here to find. Slowly, she lowered her hand. And saved the photo. That single decision changed everything. Because across the city, someone else was already looking at the same image. Watching. Silent. Unmoving. Daniel didn't react immediately. He just stared at the screen, at her. The room around him remained calm, controlled, exactly the way he liked it. Nothing out of place. Nothing unexpected. Until now. "Who is she?" he asked quietly. One of his men stepped forward. "Tourist," he replied. "Photographer. American." Daniel's eyes didn't move. Still fixed. still focused. She shouldn't have seen that, the man added. Silence filled the room. Then Daniel leaned back slightly, his expression unreadable. But his decision was already made. Find her. A brief pause. Then, before anyone else does. And just like that, Ava Carter stopped being invisible. She became a target. And she didn't even know it yet. Ava didn't sleep that night. She tried, closing her eyes, turning off the lights, lying still, but her mind refused to rest. The image kept coming back. That face. That stillness. That feeling that something about it wasn't right. She exhaled slowly. "It's nothing," she whispered. But her body didn't believe her. Her chest felt tight, her instincts restless, like something was coming, and she didn't know what. Minutes passed. Then more. Until suddenly, she sat up. Enough. She reached for her camera again, scrolling quickly until she found the image. Her fingers slowed as she zoomed in. Closer. And again, that same feeling. Stronger now. Like the photo wasn't just something she took, but something that had noticed her too. Ava locked the screen immediately. That was enough. She stood up, this time without hesitation. She needed air. Movement. Anything to break the silence pressing against her. She slipped on her shoes, grabbed her bag, and walked to the door. Her hand paused on the handle for just a second. Then she opened it. The hallway was quiet. Too quiet. Ava stepped out, and the door clicked shut behind her. The sound echoed more than it should have. She started walking. Calm. Controlled. But the tension in her chest didn't go away. Then she heard it. Footsteps. Behind her. Ava froze. The sound stopped too. Her breath caught as she slowly turned. Nothing. The hallway was empty. Still. Silent. She frowned slightly. "No, this is stupid," she muttered under her breath. Turning back, she picked up her pace. The elevator was just ahead. A few more steps. And suddenly, a hand grabbed her arm. Hard. Ava gasped, her body reacting instantly. She twisted, trying to pull free, but the grip tightened. "Don't scream." The voice was low. "Close." Right behind her. Her heart slammed against her chest. "Let me go." A hand covered her mouth. Firm. Controlled. No noise. Everything happened too fast. Too precise. Ava struggled, kicked, twisted again, but it didn't matter. Whoever this was, they had done this before. A cloth pressed against her face. A sharp scent. Her strength faded almost immediately. Her vision blurred. Her body weakened. The hallway tilted. And then everything went dark. When Ava opened her eyes, she knew something was wrong. Not panic. Not confusion. Certainty. This wasn't her room. The ceiling above her was clean, sharp, unfamiliar. She pushed herself up slightly, her body heavy, her breath uneven. Then it hit her. And in that moment, Ava realized something terrifying. She wasn't tied down. Because she didn't need to be. She wasn't meant to escape. Her eyes moved quickly around the room. Minimal. Controlled. Nothing out of place. And then, she saw him. Standing across from her. Still. Watching. The same face. From the photo. Except now, he was real. And somehow, more dangerous. Daniel didn't move. He didn't speak. He just observed her, like she was something unexpected. Ava's chest tightened. "You," she said, her voice unsteady. "You're the one from the photo." A brief pause. Then, "Yes." His voice was calm. Low. Controlled. No emotion. That scared her more. Ava swallowed. "Why am I here?" Daniel stepped forward slowly, every movement deliberate. "You took something," he said. Ava shook her head quickly. "I didn't take anything." "The photo." He cut in. Silence. Ava's breath caught. Of course he knew. "I didn't know what it was," she said quickly. "I was just taking pictures." "I know." That calm again. That certainty. Like everything had already been decided. Daniel stopped in front of her, close enough to make her tense. "They're looking for you," he said. Ava frowned slightly. "Who?" "The men you saw." A pause. Then, They don't leave witnesses. The air shifted instantly. Colder. Heavier. Ava shook her head slowly. This doesn't make sense. You exist, Daniel said quietly. That's enough. Silence settled between them. Her thoughts scattered. Her breathing uneven. So what? She whispered. I stay here. Daniel studied her for a moment, carefully, like he was trying to understand something beyond the situation. Then, yes. Ava stared at him. You kidnapped me. No. His tone didn't change. I kept you alive. That hit differently, because part of her knew it might be true. Daniel turned slightly, walking toward the window. The city stretched endlessly below, glowing and distant. You can't leave, he said. Not harsh. Not loud. Final. Ava's chest tightened. Who are you? Daniel didn't answer immediately. When he finally turned back, something about him felt heavier. More defined. More dangerous. The one person keeping you alive. A pause. Then, don't make that difficult. Silence filled the room again. But this time, it didn't feel temporary. It felt like the beginning of something she couldn't escape. Because what Ava didn't know was that this wasn't just about a photo anymore. It was about a past she hadn't uncovered. A truth Daniel hadn't revealed. And a connection that would change everything. Very soon. She wouldn't have a choice. The first thing Ava noticed was the silence. Not the peaceful kind. The controlled kind. The kind that made you feel like every sound mattered. She sat at the edge of the bed, her eyes moving slowly around the room, as if something might change if she looked long enough. But nothing did. Everything stayed the same. Clean. Minimal. Controlled. Just like him. Ava exhaled quietly and stood up. Her body still felt weak, but not enough to stop her. She walked toward the window. The city stretched endlessly below, lights glowing, cars moving, life continuing like nothing had happened. Like she hadn't just been taken. Like she hadn't just lost control. Her fingers touched the glass. Cold. Distant. Untouchable. You're awake. His voice came from behind her. Calm. Low. Certain. Ava didn't turn immediately. I didn't think I had a choice, she replied. A brief silence followed. Then she turned. Daniel stood exactly where she had last seen him. Still. Watching. Always watching. Ava crossed her arms slightly, not out of comfort, but instinct. So what now? She asked. Daniel stepped closer, slow, deliberate. You stay. Ava let out a short breath. Of course I do. No anger. Just acceptance. Daniel stopped a few feet away. You'll be safe here, he added. Ava studied him carefully. You keep saying that, she said, her voice steady. But nothing about this feels safe. For a brief second. Something shifted. Small. Barely noticeable. But she saw it. A flicker in his eyes. Gone almost immediately. They won't come here, Daniel said. Not loudly. Not forcefully. Just certain. Ava frowned slightly. You don't even sound worried. I'm not. The answer came too easily. Too confidently. That's not normal, she said. Daniel didn't respond. And somehow, that silence said everything. Ava turned away, walking slowly across the room, her thoughts beginning to race. The photo. The men. Him. None of it made sense. Until something clicked. Her steps slowed. Then stopped. You knew my father. The words came out quietly, but they hit hard. The room changed. Not physically. But something shifted. Ava turned back slowly. Daniel hadn't moved. But his expression had. Just slightly. Enough to notice. What did you say? He asked. Ava held his gaze. My father, she repeated. He was here. In Seoul. Silence. But this time, it wasn't controlled. It was heavy. Ava stepped closer. You reacted, she said softly. When I mentioned him before, you knew that name. Daniel's jaw tightened slightly. Still calm. Still composed. But not untouched. You're mistaken. Ava shook her head. No. She stepped closer again. Close enough to feel the tension between them. You don't look like someone who gets surprised easily, she continued. But you were. Daniel didn't answer. didn't move. But the silence between them had changed. It wasn't empty anymore. It was full of something he wasn't saying. Ava exhaled slowly. Then tell me the truth. Her voice softened. Not demanding. Not afraid. Just steady. What does this have to do with him? Daniel looked at her for a long moment. Long enough to feel like time had slowed. Then he stepped back, creating distance. Like he needed it. This isn't about your father. Ava didn't move. That's not an answer. It's the only one you're getting. His tone had shifted again. Controlled. Closed. Ava felt frustration rise in her chest. You dragged me into this, she said. The least you can do is explain why. Daniel turned slightly, his gaze returning to the window. You're alive, he said. That's enough. Ava let out a quiet, disbelieving breath. No, it's not. Silence filled the space again. She waited, hoping he would say more. Explain something. Anything. But he didn't. And that was when it became clear. Daniel wasn't just hiding something. He was protecting it. And that made it worse. Because whatever the truth was, it mattered. A lot. Ava lowered her gaze briefly. Then looked back at him. My father died without answers, she said quietly. I'm not leaving here the same way. That changed something. Subtle. But real. Daniel turned slowly, meeting her eyes again. And this time, there was something different. Not cold. Not distant. Just conflicted. You should stop asking questions, he said. Ava shook her head. I didn't come all this way to stop. A long pause followed. Then, Daniel looked away again. But this time, it didn't feel like control. It felt like restraint. Like he was holding something back. Something he didn't want to say. Or couldn't. Ava watched him carefully. And for the first time, she didn't just see a dangerous man. She saw something else. Something hidden. Something human. And somehow, that made everything more complicated. Because now, she didn't know if she should fear him, or trust him. And that uncertainty was far more dangerous than anything else. The silence didn't last. It never did. Ava felt it before anything happened, that subtle shift in the air, the kind that made everything feel wrong. She was standing near the window when she heard it. A soft sound. Almost nothing, but enough to make her turn. Did you hear that? She asked quietly. Daniel didn't answer. He was already moving, fast, precise, like his body reacted before his mind needed to. Ava's chest tightened. What is it? Daniel raised a hand, signaling silence. Then it came again. A faint noise. Not from the street below, but closer. Much closer. Ava's pulse quickened. That's not normal, right? Daniel's expression hardened slightly. It's not supposed to happen. That was enough. Fear settled in, sharp, immediate. Ava took a small step back. Who is it? Daniel didn't respond. Instead, he moved toward the wall and pressed something almost invisible. A quiet click followed. Within seconds, 2 guards entered, alert, focused, ready. Perimeter? Daniel asked. Breached, one of them replied. The word hit Ava instantly. Breached. They found me, she said softly. And in that moment, she realized this was no longer about a mistake. It was about survival. Daniel turned toward her, and for the first time, there was no calm in his eyes, only focus. Stay behind me, he said. There was no softness in his voice. No room for argument. Ava didn't argue. Her body moved before her thoughts could catch up, stepping closer, staying within reach. Because suddenly, the room didn't feel safe anymore. Footsteps echoed outside. Heavy. Deliberate. Not hiding. They were coming. Ava's breathing became uneven. How did they find me? No answer. Only movement. Daniel stepped forward, placing himself between her and the door, a silent shield. Ava noticed it. And something about that made her chest tighten, not just from fear. The door handle moved slowly, then stopped. Silence. 1 second. 2. Then. A loud impact. The door shook violently. Ava flinched. They're not leaving, she whispered. I know, Daniel replied calmly. Another hit, stronger this time. The wood began to crack. Ava's fingers curled into her palm. "This is because of me." Daniel didn't respond. But she saw it, the tension in his shoulders, the readiness in his stance. The door slammed again. And this time, it broke. Men rushed in. Fast. Armed. Focused. Everything changed in an instant. Daniel moved first. Faster than Ava expected. One step forward. One strike. Clean. Precise. The first man dropped immediately. Ava froze. Her body locked as she watched. This wasn't chaos. It was control. Every movement Daniel made was calculated. Another man lunged forward. Daniel blocked, turned, and brought him down just as quickly. It happened too fast to follow. Too smooth to question. Like this was normal for him. Like this was who he really was. Ava stepped back instinctively, her breath sharp, her vision narrowing. She didn't belong in this world. Another man tried to push past Daniel, toward her. Ava saw it. Too late. But Daniel didn't miss it. He was already there. Intercepting. Stopping him before he could get close. That moment hit differently. Not because of the violence. But because of the intention. They weren't just here to fight. They were here for her. Not for information. Not for warning. For her. Within moments. It was over. The room fell silent again. But this silence felt heavier. Ava's chest rose and fell quickly as her eyes moved across the room, then back to him. Daniel stood still. Unshaken. Like nothing had happened. But something had. Because when he turned toward her, his expression had changed. Not cold. Not distant. Focused. Protective. Dangerous. "Are you hurt?" he asked. Ava shook her head slowly. "No." Her voice barely held steady. Daniel nodded once, then turned to the guards. "Clean this up." His tone was calm again. Controlled. Like he had already moved on. But Ava hadn't. She was still standing there, still trying to understand what just happened. "You said they wouldn't come here," she said quietly. Daniel looked at her. A brief pause. "I was wrong." No excuse. No explanation. Just truth. And somehow, that made it worse. Ava stepped closer. "They came for me." "Yes." No denial. No hesitation. Silence stretched between them. "So what happens now?" she asked. Daniel held her gaze, and for the first time, there was no distance in it. "Now," he said quietly, "you stay even closer." Ava frowned. "What does that mean?" Daniel stepped toward her, closing the space between them. "It means you don't move without me." A pause. Then, "Because now, they won't stop." The words settled heavily in the air. And Ava felt it. This wasn't over. It was just beginning. The room felt different after that. Not quieter. Not calmer. Just heavier. Ava stood still, her thoughts struggling to settle. The broken door, the bodies, the truth she could no longer ignore, none of it felt distant anymore. This wasn't a mistake. It was her reality. She looked at Daniel. Not as the man from the photo. Not as the one who brought her here. But as the man who had just stood between her and everything that wanted her gone. "You knew this would happen," she said quietly. Daniel didn't answer immediately. But he didn't deny it. "That's why you brought me here." Silence lingered. Ava exhaled slowly. "You didn't just save me, you pulled me deeper into it." A small shift in his jaw. Barely noticeable. But enough. "It was already happening," he said. Ava shook her head. "No. You made it permanent." The words settled between them. Heavy. Unavoidable. Ava stepped closer, steady now. "Who was my father to you?" This time, Daniel didn't look away. But he didn't answer either. Ava's voice softened. "He died without telling me the truth. I'm not going to live like that." Something in Daniel changed. Subtle. But real. He looked away briefly, as if the memory itself carried weight. "Your father," he started, then paused. Ava didn't interrupt. She simply waited. And that made it harder for him to stay silent. "He wasn't who you think he was," Daniel said at last. Ava frowned. "What does that mean?" Daniel took a slow breath. "He was part of this world, long before you ever knew." The words landed harder than she expected. Ava shook her head instinctively. No, that's not possible. It is. His voice remained calm, but certain. Ava felt something shift inside her. Not disbelief. Not completely. But something breaking. Then why didn't he tell me? She asked, her voice quieter now. Daniel met her eyes. Because he wanted you far away from it. Ava let out a slow breath. And now I'm right in the middle of it. Daniel didn't argue. There was nothing to argue. Silence filled the space between them again, but this time it felt different, less tense, more final. Ava lowered her gaze for a moment, then looked back up. So what happens now? Daniel didn't hesitate. You stay. Ava let out a tired breath. That's not a choice. No, Daniel said calmly. It's not. Ava studied him for a long moment. Then she said something that surprised even her. I'm not afraid of you. Daniel's expression didn't change. But something in his eyes did. You should be, he replied. Ava shook her head slightly. No. I think I understand you now. That made him pause. Just enough to matter. Ava stepped closer, closing the space between them. You don't want me here because I'm a problem, she said quietly. You want me here because you don't trust anyone else to keep me alive. Daniel didn't respond. But his silence said everything. Ava's voice softened further. You could have let them take me, but you didn't. Another pause. Then Daniel spoke, more honestly than before. I don't let things happen that I can control. Ava held his gaze. And I'm one of those things. Yes. The answer came without hesitation. It should have pushed her away. It should have made her angry. But it didn't. Because she heard what he didn't say. Ava exhaled slowly. That's not control, she said. That's something else. Daniel's jaw tightened slightly. But he didn't argue. Because he knew she was right. The silence between them shifted again, softer now, less guarded. Ava glanced at the camera resting nearby. Then she walked toward it. Daniel didn't stop her. He just watched. Ava picked it up slowly and turned it on. The screen lit up. The photo was still there. The one that started everything. She stared at it for a moment. Then she turned the camera and pointed it at him. Daniel didn't move. Don't, he said quietly. Ava looked at him. Why? A pause. Because that's not something you should keep. Ava held his gaze for a moment longer. Then she said softly, maybe it is. And before he could stop her, she pressed the shutter. Click. The sound echoed lightly in the room. But this time, it didn't feel like a mistake. Ava lowered the camera and looked at the image. Not danger. Not a threat. Just him. For the first time. Not as something to fear. Just a man. She looked back at Daniel. And something unspoken passed between them. Something neither of them fully understood. But both of them felt. This wasn't just about survival anymore. It wasn't just about the past. It was about a choice neither of them expected to make. And neither of them were walking away from it.